Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. We are moving on with Season 3, Episode 11, Revelations. Now, Brian, tell us where this lands in the X-Files legacy.
Well, I think I would have expected it would have landed somewhere around the middle kind of ground. I think it's obviously it deals quite heavily with religious themes, which right off the bat turns a lot of people off. However, it is a Scully-centric episode, which I think people like yourself kind of get more turned on by that. So I would I would have expected it to hit somewhere around the middle. So I'm quite surprised to find when I look at the IMDb ranking system that they've got for the episodes, out of the 200 and odd episodes, it ranks at 182. So so basically sitting in the bottom kind of end of the series. So as far as the ranking's concerned, this is one of the lower rated episodes, which surprises me. I'll be perfectly honest.
Right.
I'll be perfectly honest. So I'll be intrigued to see where you fall on that. But it surprises me.
Right. Well, let's just jump into the episode. And it should be said that this was directed by David Nutter, and it's his last ever directing of an episode in the X-Files. Yeah. So this is where he kind of steps out, which is a bit of a shame because he's done quite a lot of good episodes so far.
He's done some of our favourites across the past two seasons. So yeah.
So we've got a kind of interesting opening where we have a preacher played by the wonderful R. Lee Ermey, and I was like, okay, I'm in an episode having R. Lee Ermey all the way through it. I can't wait for this. So good.
He's gone and done before his name even comes up in the credits.
Yes. So he does his little sermon. There's a strange older gentleman watching him who appears backstage and then kills him.
Yeah.
So you've got the religious opening to this one, the stigmata, the idea of this, which he was obviously faking at the start of this, and the kind of older gentleman who seems to have some kind of power.
Yeah. Even as a person of faith, I have to ask, how gullible was the congregation in that church?
Yeah.
Like he's giving this speech where it's all perfectly set up for it, and then there's no real evidence that on the back of his hand today he's clearly crushing some kind of blood pouch. It's just like I would even as a person of faith, I would want to see more evidence to know this guy isn't a quack. But yeah, I to be honest, I didn't quite recognize R. Lee Ermey at first. I was like, I know the face, I know the voice. Where do I know him from? Because he's so recognizable, and it's because of the hair. I'm so used to seeing him as the bald drill sergeant that, or the kind of the shaven sides drill sergeant. It's just like, but he's
a wild and varied career. I mean, I most noticeably remember him from Full Metal Jacket, where he's the drill instructor, or the other end of his career in The Frighteners, where he's the soldier.
I knew you were going to say. Yeah. If the Brits on Flicks podcast stuff is up still on iTunes. We did used to do a podcast called Brits on Flicks. We did review The Frighteners. It's a highly entertaining review, I must say. So go and check that out if you want to hear me and Graham talk about The Frighteners, because we had a good laugh talking about that film. But
certainly,
yeah.
So we get the intro, and then we're straight into Scully looking over the body of the dead preacher, and Mulder is all about. Well, tell us what Mulder's doing in this sequence, Brian.
Well, the thing is, Mulder's there fully expecting that this guy's a fake. Mulder's already in on it. Basically, he's been tracking a killer who's been bumping off stigmatics, so-called stigmatics, and basically shows a complete disrespect towards Scully, as he is going to do throughout the majority of this episode, quite frankly. It's like
a role reversal.
And it's just like, but whereas I feel like Scully respects Mulder and shows him the due respect, I feel like in this episode Mulder doesn't do the same. Like he brings her here fully knowing what he's walking into, what he's expecting, and yet he's clearly not told her. So she's out of the loop in that regard. And I think knowing that she's a person of faith as well, you know, he is her partner, he knows about her faith. I think knowing that information makes it even more disrespectful, given the circumstances of the case.
There's a lot that Mulder does whenever he believes in something. Scully goes along with him, but she rationalises with proper reasons as to why she doesn't buy it or what she thinks it could be. And Mulder's just kind of like, no.
Yeah. He's very scoffy at it. He's like the petulant child in the back of the class who just mocks the person who's got up and said something.
There's no reasons. It's just his reason is just cause. Just cause. I do love when he mentions, though, it's a weird line which I can't quite remember, but he's like, it's a international ring of religious murderers or something like that. Just this weird idea of like a globe-trotting religious killer.
Because it's I don't know where this idea came from, but just in this episode they mention this idea that at any given time within the world there are 12 confirmed kind of stigmatics, which obviously harkens to the 12 apostles. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's probably just complete bunkum.
But it's a great idea.
It's something that's worth exploring in an episode of X-Files. So Scully brings that up. Not saying she believes it, but just that, that is an idea that's tossed around. And Mulder's just like,
yeah.
He just literally says it's been widely discredited, and he's just like, yeah, moving on. So that pretty much tells you where Mulder...
Why is he even there? He's already discounted that anybody actually has stigmata. So there's nothing like that interests him there.
Yeah.
Why is he going to that case?
Yeah, he's there to track the killer. Because don't forget, Mulder is still a profiler. Mulder is, that's how he kind of made his way up in the FBI as a profiler. And even though he does like to go off on little jaunts with his X-Files and whatnot, he is still one of the people that I would imagine an assistant director goes to and says, look, can you build us a profile of this case? We've got a killer. He's going around the world doing whatever. We need a profile. So I would imagine Mulder has done a profile on this, and just out of sheer casual FBI agent curiosity, he's investigating it. Which is why he's so nonchalant when he gets there. It's like you can see he's not really invested. He doesn't care about the case, other than let's get a killer off the streets. That'd be nice, but I don't think there's anything paranormal going on here. So, we go from there to this is after just hearing about the 12 stigmatics, and knowing that this guy has killed 11. So we go to a classroom setting, and there's a boy in the class called Kevin who suddenly, whilst sharing his gift with numbers, exhibits the signs of the stigmata. So it's a nice classroom scene, I think, just because they do some nice little character moments, whether it's with the teacher being a bit sarky with Kevin, whether it's the way Kevin gives some like looks to the kids around him. He's a bit of a maybe not so much troublemaker, but just he plays by his own rules kind of thing, and the other kids kind of find him a bit funny, so you can understand why he plays up to that. So
we're introduced to him like he's kind of picking on somebody, just a little bit of mild bullying, and then instantly the teacher shows him bullying's wrong by bullying him in front of everybody and bringing him up to the front of the class.
Yeah, so pretty much any school really.
Yeah, ideally.
So 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 he shows the signs of stigmata, and then Mulder and Scully come to see him. There's a social worker who's filled them in on his back. She fills him in on his background, says that his father has been institutionalized because he believes that this stigmata stuff is real, whereas initially people thought it was him who was doing it, who was abusing his son. But in the end, he got institutionalized because he kidnapped his son, thinking that he had to protect him because he was chosen by God. And then Scully after this social worker kind of relays that information, Scully goes in and meets with the child, tries to comfort him, and then he blows up a thermometer.
Yes. Kind of weird scene. This is where it starts to begin like an almost exposition dump here. And the scene after it with the mother as well. It feels as if they're just firing lots of information. And to be honest, none of it's particularly interesting.
It's not. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's necessary. I would say it's necessary because obviously, I think any child who starts exhibiting the signs of the stigmata, I think immediately you're going to get, because ultimately the whole of this episode it's really all about faith and is God speaking to us, and if he is, are we listening? You know, that's the final line of dialogue in the episode, and that's really the theme of the episode. So I think this scene in particular plays really well into that theme, because if you have a child that is exhibiting the signs of the stigmata, I think in the day and age that we live in, the first thing that people are going to be thinking is not, is this kid exhibiting the signs of stigmata, but is this kid's parents abusing him? I think that would be the first thought that would jump into anyone's head, even people of faith these days. And that sets up right there this notion that we live in a world where faith isn't the first go-to. It is actually some other kind of more rational explanation, so to speak. So I just find it. Well, we'll get to the parents when we get to them. Let's go move on to the next scene with the mother. Okay, so Kevin's mum arrives, and Mulder tells her that someone might be after her son. Social worker says that she wants to take Kevin back into the shelter until they find out what's going on, which basically says we can't trust Kevin in your hands because for all we know you could very well be the one abusing him, and understandably so. The mother gets really offended by that and has a bit of a go at her, and it's a tricky situation because if this was a real world situation, who do you root for? Like I could totally understand where the social worker is coming from, but even so,
it never feels like a real situation. Like the mother character feels, especially, and the father character as well, feel either underwritten or the performances are poor. But I just don't buy the responses that they have.
I totally agree with you on the father character. I don't agree with you on the mother. I think the mother's like a black hole of emotion. There's just nothing there. It's just like you're taking my son away. Okay. That's not what I saw at all. I saw anger in her. I saw her trying to contain, because she's been through the ringer already. She's been through this whole process at least twice. When the father was originally arrested for it, and then again once he was institutionalized, and then she's had to fight to get her son. So she's angry. She's pissed off. She's sick of the social workers getting involved. And the fact that she has had to put up a fight suggests to me that she's not going to be the kind of person that's going to go off in a corner and cry and start sobbing. She's stern. She's switched off to it at this point, I would imagine. So,
I don't see anything at all from her.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I did, but I do agree with you about the father. When we get there. But. So yeah, I do find the the social work, and I don't know if it's just because I have kids and I can relate more with parents than I can with social workers, and because I've heard so many horror stories about social workers, but there is a point where she just comes off as really judgmental. Just the way she delivers a particular line, where it's just like, you could at least try to show a bit more kind of compassion there, that look, this is out of my hands, I just have to do this because it's my job. I'm not saying you did anything, but it's just, this is literally procedure. This is what I have to do, just a procedure. So, but there's no attempt really to do that. It's just like very kind of, she's very stern with this mother, and just like, yes, we're going to take him back into care. And it's like, yeah. I have a beef.
So after that, we go to the asylum. We go to see Kevin's father, who seems to be a kind of religious nut almost. And I feel that he should be delivering some a kind of harbinger of doom. He should be creating a kind of atmosphere and dread to come, but it doesn't have that effect on me at all.
No. I feel like he's a poor man's... What's the name of that actor who just recently died, who was in Midnight Run?
Charles Grodin.
Charles Grodin. I feel like he's a very poor man's Charles Grodin. Because he looks a little bit like him, with a similar sounding voice, but none of the charisma. And I feel like he's just, I think they just say, look, you're a crazy guy, you've got these wacky theories, run with it. And he's just, there isn't really a right lot there. Again, it's the exposition thing. He is literally there to be Basil Exposition. But he doesn't really give us a right lot beyond you have to go full circle to find the truth. Which is literally all he's there to do, is to get something in so that later we can pick up on it, and then later after that we can pick up on it again to show that, hey, perhaps God is talking to Scully. I agree. He's not the strongest.
It's
point.
Shot in a nice fashion. It's kind of moody lighting that it feels as if it should be more atmospheric and leading towards some kind of horrific evil coming after the sun, but it just never comes across that manner. Which
I feel like this guy should be quoting the Bible more. I feel like he should literally be full of kind of revelation prophecies and stuff.
Fire and brimstone.
Proper fire and brimstone. So we go from there to a rather amusing scene in which Kevin is... So he's at the shelter and he's telling horror stories to the boys that are in the home. And his imagination is kind of running wild. But as his imagination is running wild and he's telling this story, a character kind of comes into the home who kind of fits the description that he's been building of the character in his story. And what's the name of this guy? Merriman? Something Merriman?
Berryman.
Michael Berryman. So this is the guy from The Hills Have Eyes. Has a very strange look about him. Yeah, he's basically, if you want a weirdo, this is the guy you cast because he's got the look. Which, poor guy, but hey, at least it gave him a career, I suppose.
It's like either a mutant or a backwoods dweller or a cannibal. He's in all these kind of movies. He's just he's never the school teacher or guidance counsellor.
No. But I love the reaction of the kids when he comes in and they all just scarper. It's like it is at that point, obviously in retrospect it's fine, but at that point I'm thinking, why the hell isn't Kevin getting the hell out of Dodge? I'm like, why isn't he running like all the other kids? Because I know I would be. But we get our answer to that question in the very next scene.
Yes.
In which the kids are giving a description to Mulder of a man who looks like Gomez Adams, or as Mulder puts it, Homer Simpson's evil twin. And then Kevin's mum turns up and...
Well, first of all, they've definitely got a better sketch artist from the one from Jersey. The Jersey Devil.
When it brought it up, I had a feeling you'd bring up Jersey Devil.
That picture is spot on. That is wonderful.
It is, yeah. Let's just say kids are better at giving a description than tramps, than drunken vagrants. So yeah. So the kids give the description, and Kevin's mum identifies the picture that is drawn as a man named Owen Jarvis, who came in to, basically as a handyman for them once their dad was incarcerated. So we go straight from there to Jarvis pleading
again, like, this is the first of several kidnappings that Kevin goes on throughout this episode.
There's a lot of kidnappings. A lot of kidnappings.
It's like they keep going, like, we'll look after you, and then they instantly turn their back and he's gone, and it just kind of works its way up the food chain. And again, the mother comes in and just like, your son's been kidnapped, and it's like, I feel as if she's more sedated than the husband, because it's just like, all right.
Yeah, I do think that in this particular scene, I don't agree with you about the previous scene, but I do agree with you about this scene. I think she should be much more hysterical. I think she should be tearing the place up, saying, like,
you were supposed to keep my kid safe.
You took your child off me, thinking I was the one who was the danger to him, and you couldn't even protect him. Like, where is he? Get the on him, like, like any normal parent would. So I'll agree with you about this scene, but not about the previous scene. So we go to we're in this attic at Kevin's house, or Jarvis's house, I should say, Owen Jarvis's house, and Jarvis is pleading with Kevin to trust him. Which, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. He's got you to his attic and locked you in.
Yeah, playing with little Noah's Ark figures. So he talks. Mulder and Scully show up, and Owen rather ineffectually goes down there with the shotgun, but immediately gives it up when he gets down there. So you're kind of like, why even bother take it, mate? One can only assume that he recognises these guys are FBI agents and not apostles of the devil. So he gives up his arms. But
what I really love about this is when we jump to the next scene, they're interviewing him on the scene. There's no other police around, and they've taken him all the way up into the attic to sit him down and talk to him. Like, it just seems like, why is nobody else involved here? Where's the standard police sheriff that we hate?
The way I see it, just for the sake of rationalising it in my own head, Scully's just gone up there to search for the boy. Mulder's got Owen, literally kind of takes him up with him to follow Scully. Scully's still kind of mulling around looking for the boy. Mulder goes up to the attic with him. Boy's not here. Okay, let's call for some backup. Sit this guy down, get him tied up, question him until the backup gets here. So I think that's where we've come in to that moment.
Right. And we're never explained where Kevin has gone or how he got out of the house. It's just he's there 1 minute. Scully's about to come through. He's gone. So what do you think that's alluding to?
I think that is God shielding him. I think that's divine intervention. I think now it does raise the question: if God is willing to step in at that point with divine intervention and hide him, why doesn't he do something, at the factory? But then I guess at the factory, that's where Scully comes in, and that's where God's kind of speaking to Scully comes in. And if she hadn't have acted in faith, then she wouldn't have got there, and Kevin wouldn't have survived. But we'll get there. I'm jumping ahead.
There's some things that I didn't really read into too much. I just didn't quite understand or try to understand. This was one of the sequences. There's another sequence later on that had me a little bit confused, I'd say, for a moment, but we'll get to that later on, and we'll bring it back up. But
I think this scene here with where they question Owen Jarvis is quite a key scene as well, because again, it's so we've come into this story where we live in a world in which actually faith isn't the first kind of response, but rather blaming parents, trying to look for something more quote unquote logical. And then Owen Jarvis is kind of along with the father, who can just come off as a real crazy person, Owen Jarvis is someone who, this is the first like disciple kind of character where actually no, this is someone who operates on pure faith, and I think this scene kind of is really all about that. And the question Owen, who says that God told him to protect the boy, and he talks about what it is to have truth faith before jumping out of a window and vanishing. So what he does is he shows commitment to his faith. He does what he believes God is telling him to do, irrespective of what people think about him. And I think this scene really kind of is an instigator for Scully in particular, because obviously she's a person of faith, but as we find out later on, she's not, she's a Catholic. Confession's quite a big thing for Catholics. She hasn't been to confession for 6 years. So we see that actually, while she's a person of faith, that faith is something that's kind of maybe been on the back burner for a while. Yeah. And I think...
What is it that Owen says before he jumps out the window? Something about he just wants to die?
He just wants to go to heaven. No, he just wants to go to heaven.
And then he jumps out the window pretty much face first.
Yeah.
Hands behind his back.
Yeah.
Messes up his looks a little bit because of the glass.
He's not got a pretty face anymore.
No, so he pretty much lands face first, I would assume. I mean, that should kill him. Yeah, and then he instantly snaps the handcuffs from behind his back. Yeah. Is this showing... I mean, is this supposed to allude to the fact that he is chosen, he is allowed to survive the fall, allowed to free himself to continue?
I think so. I think a lot of this episode hinges on divine intervention, on God moving pieces on the board. Owen is a piece, Scully is a piece, but it all hinges on, again, it's that last line of dialogue is key to everything else that comes before it, which is, I'm afraid of what? That God is speaking, but nobody's listening. And the whole episode is about faith, and it's like if you get that slight inclination that perhaps God's saying something to you and you don't act on it, then surely we're all in trouble. If everybody starts doing that, if everybody does that, if they ignore that voice in their head that could be God's voice, then we're in trouble, surely. And I think that's the key to the episode, and it's what motivates Scully. It's what kind of what makes her respond. And I think her seeing Owen like this, be someone who is such a fervent kind of, I believe in God, I believe God's speaking to me, and I'm going to act in that and nothing else. I think that kind of drives Scully to go on. And obviously the nature of Owen's death, which we will get to in a minute. We'll head there. But so Kevin goes home, but his mum isn't there, and the killer shows up to take Kevin, but Owen stops him. Gives his life in the process. So so Owen kind of distracts the killer. Killer kind of has this way of burning with his hand. And Mulder and Scully arrive to get Kevin, but are too late for the killer. The killer's gone. Kevin asks Scully if she is the one sent to protect him, which I find
this scene is my favourite scene in the episode.
Is it?
I feel as if it's very atmospheric. Okay. I love the music. I think the music is expertly done here. You've got the young boy. There's weight. He's stuck in the house. Someone is there. We know this killer is very, very dangerous, and you have that kind of stalking scene where he's in danger, and the killer's getting closer. The fact that he spots the wicker baskets stigmata as well. And it builds up really kind of nicely. It's got a good bit of construction and atmosphere about it. It feels like a well-directed scene.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. I can agree with that. The last line of dialogue in the scene is a bit cringy when Kevin just asks Scully, and I don't know if it's just in his delivery or what, but he's like, "Are you the one sent to protect me?" And you're just like,
as he steps over Owen's body.
Yeah.
And next.
Next. Okay. So Scully's autopsy suggests something supernatural about Owen. There's no decomposition, and he smells of flowers, which once again Mulder really dismisses with a Saint Owen. Right. Good one, Scully. Good one.
But again, this is another scene that I really love, because it's one of those hairs in the back of the neck sequences. You know, when something is fundamentally going against the way it should be reacting. You know, the dead body's not taking on any of the forms of what a dead body should, and that's just eerie. That's
not to mention Scully being the one who's perhaps buying into it, and Mulder not being. That's pretty eerie as well. So so there is an idea there that is put forward that, and like I say, Mulder kind of uses it in a rather mocking way, but Saint Owen, and not the kind of saint that has been lifted up to that pedestal by men, but rather as in a genuine, bona fide, chosen by God saint. Now, I don't know how much of this stuff, Scully mentions Saint Ignatius, and again Mulder kind of poo-poos it. But some of these things were said to have been recorded when these people died, just about the whole decomposition or the lack thereof, and this, that, and the other. But basically it puts forward the idea that Owen was a man touched by God, and that obviously feeds into Scully's belief system, starts to reawaken things.
Yeah. I think there was one thing I wanted to mention about this sequence, and it says everything about Mulder that's wrong. He enters the room with the line, "Any revelations?" I mean, it's funny on one hand, but it's completely dismissive and demoralizing almost.
It's gaslighting.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's gaslighting. I think I was trying to think of that term in a previous episode, but yeah, that's what it is. It's absolutely gaslighting, which is when somebody says something in such a way that it means that if you believe what you believe or want to say what you want to say, it instantly makes you feel like perhaps you're crazy. So the way he walks into that room in such a dismissive manner, any revelations, turns into a bit of a joke. From that point on, it would make Scully feel like anything she has to say from a faith perspective isn't going to be taken seriously. It's going to sound crazy. And I find it really disrespectful, because the amount of times that Scully goes along with Mulder, she makes it clear that she doesn't believe what Mulder believes, but she comes at it from a logical standpoint. She doesn't mock him for what he believes. So I find Mulder to be a douchebag in this episode.
Yes.
So, but on the one hand, I like that because it's a genuine character flaw. I think that's people for you. People are like that. They don't always realise they're doing it. They don't mean to. I don't think Mulder is deliberately trying to offend Scully in any way, but he's not. He's not reading the situation. He's not looking at where Scully's coming from with this, and as a result, he's ending up gaslighting her. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so Mulder comes in and he finds prints burned into Owen's neck that belong to a man named Simon Gates, who's a wealthy businessman who apparently was in an accident that I believe killed someone, and he went off to basically travelled around the world to find himself, I don't know, seek redemption, whatever.
Yeah.
Ended up in Israel and suddenly came back as a servant of Satan. As you do. Went off to find God, came back as a servant of Satan. So, so then he receives a call Mulder receives a call saying that Kevin was seen in 2 places at once, both with the social worker and with his mother. So yeah. So like my reading of that is that the second Kevin, once again, is divine intervention. It's God putting people off the scent, and helping Kevin to get with his mother.
Right.
Which
and we get to see it in action. Yeah. In the next scene, because we've got the breakdown of Kevin's mother's car.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, divine intervention could have stopped that from overheating. if I want to be like completely Mulderish about the whole situation.
No, I get that. But again, it's all about who God is speaking to. You know, like this is the thing. It's like, because that's another thing that it's hard to talk about this episode without talking about the last scene, because I feel like everything is building towards that last scene. Like the priest that Scully goes to see at the end says, because one of the big things for Scully in this episode is she has a really hard time with the fact that Mulder is not on board and can't get on board and is very dismissive, understandably so. But the priest drops this little bomb that perhaps it's not meant for him, you know? And he does raise that idea that sometimes God is speaking to specific people. And just because someone else can't hear what God is saying to you doesn't mean that God ain't saying it. It just means that it's not meant for them. It's meant for you. And I feel like this episode on the whole is Scully's journey. I think it's as much about Scully as it is about Kevin. And I feel like God is working things out so that ultimately Scully comes into the picture, and ultimately that Scully has to act in faith. If Scully does not act in faith, the boy is dead. It takes her stepping out of her comfort zone, acting in faith, remembering who she is as a Catholic, as a follower of Christ, to save this boy. If she doesn't listen to that voice, if she doesn't follow it, then the boy's dead. So to me, that's really what this episode is about. So yeah, I get what you mean. Well, it's the same with anything, you know. If God's so good, why does he allow bad things to happen? To which the answer is, well, why do we allow them to happen? I don't want to get it. I won't turn this into a big sermon, but that's what the episode is about. It raises those questions. I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to ask the question, well, you know, if God's doing all these things where he keeps on doing divine intervention, why doesn't he just stop the car from breaking down? And my answer to that, purely as a person of faith, obviously you do not have to subscribe to this, but my answer to that is because the mother is not the one whose journey this is. It's Scully's, and God is trying to get Scully back on team, and he can only do that if he moves the puzzle pieces so that Scully is in charge of looking after this boy. So yeah, that's the way I reason it, which I'm sure a lot of people just say is hogwash, but getting a few calls, are we? A few texts. You okay? All good?
Yeah, sorry. Just muted it.
No worries.
Okay, so we've got the breakdown car, and we've got the CEO of Doom who arrives to help her, and he's being all kind of weird and undoes the gas, the radiator cap without anything to protect his hand from the steam.
Yeah,
just showing that he's, I don't know, weird and strange.
Yeah, there's clearly something not right about this guy. Yeah, there is something about him though, where, and it's because of the line of dialogue that he has, that I feel there is a genuine sense in this guy of, I don't know, of sadness that the world isn't a better place. Mm-hmm. I feel, and this is an idea that Carter will revisit in the series Millennium. Now, obviously that was set before the turn of the millennium, and it was about this group called the Millennium Group, and ultimately their master plan was to try and make the events of Revelation happen as soon as possible. Not because they were evil, but because from their perspective, the sooner the world ends, the sooner that God comes back, Jesus comes back and sorts everything out, then surely the better for all of us. So it's like a twisted logic in which they almost side with the devil in order to make something godly happen a bit sooner. And I feel like that's where this guy is coming from. And I feel like it tells us a lot about, because let's not forget, this guy, he killed someone accidentally, and then he went off to find himself. He was clearly disturbed by that. He was clearly upset by that. So I feel like that has fed into this notion that actually, if God is going to end it all, if he's going to come back and there's going to be a second coming, so to speak, the sooner that happens, the better. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm just reading too much into that, but I get that sense just from what we know about this guy's history and the lines of dialogue he uses with this woman here. I don't know how you feel about that, but
sure, if that's what you get into, I just get it as as the antagonist part. He's just there to drive the story forward and be all devilish and killer kind of thing. By this point, I mean, it should be said, I've kind of checked out of the episode.
Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. So I'm okay. So I know where you stand on this one. So okay. All right. So we see a second Kevin, which yes, from my perspective, divine intervention, all that.
We do get the awesome scene of the CEO pushing Kevin's mum unconscious.
Just face plants on the floor.
And she's out.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? Reminds me of the end of Batman Returns when the Penguin just goes. She just goes splat on the floor. Uh-huh. But so he goes running after this other version of Kevin, who then vanishes, and Kevin's mum has managed to start the car at this point because thankfully Simon managed to cool the engine down. And then she hits him with the car. Nice little stunt there. But then she crashes and dies. She dies, which is just like, I was not expecting that. Even as someone who's seen this episode quite a few times, it's been a while since I've seen it. I forgot that she died. I forgot that they were so heartless that they say, nope, mother's gone, which I think is again, it's another kind of ink stamp on that idea that this isn't the mother's journey. At this point, it's no longer the mother's role to save the son. It's Scully's.
And if Scully won't take that up personally, they're going to kill everybody else that can possibly protect the kid until she's back. My goodness.
Well, they're safe already because they had faith anyway, so they know where they're going. But here we go. So we learn that the mother has died. Police are there, ambulance are there. Kevin's sat in the back of the car. Says it's because he's different and he doesn't want to go back to the shelter. To which Scully suddenly decides, well, you don't have to then. You can stay with us.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how kosher that is.
I wasn't 100% sure either.
Yeah. But... Pretty sure the social workers would have something to say about that. But I guess they could argue that he's part of the case, so they're taking him for questioning. They don't necessarily.
They could be like, you've already lost him once. We can at least look after him so he doesn't get kidnapped.
So they take him back to the hotel room, and we get what is my favourite scene, I guess, or one of my favourite scenes of the episode.
Scully watching a young boy undress.
No, not that scene. But the scene in which Scully basically calls Mulder out on his BS.
Right.
So he's being, again, really dismissive and stuff. So they go to the hotel. Scully sees more signs of the stigmata on Kevin. She brings it up with Mulder, who once again dismisses it. So Scully calls him out on his BS, saying that he goes out on a limb every day, but that when it comes to evidence of a miracle, he flat out denies it. And I feel like this is a step in Scully's journey, which is that actually when people do call you out on it, part of that journey is to say, actually, no, I believe it. You don't have to believe it, but I do. And I think, you know, that's part of what faith is standing up and saying, look, this is what I believe. I'm not going to force it on you. I'm not asking you to believe it. I believe it. But if you're someone who, you know, when somebody mocks your belief system and you don't stand up to that, you don't say, no, actually, enough, then it, in many ways, it shows that you don't really have enough faith to you know.
Yeah, I mean, in my notes here, I've just put Mulder is the pot calling the kettle black. Everything, you know, he's just
big time.
It's just. I don't like this Mulder at all. You know, from someone that'll pretty much take the word of a down and out drug addled liar that they've seen something extraterrestrial rather than someone he's worked with for years that they have a belief system. You know, just. That doesn't strike me as the right Mulder. It feels wrong.
Yeah.
You know, he's smarter than that. He's not. He's not a smart-mouthed and dismissive. Just because, you know, he's not that type of person. It feels like a different kind of Mulder in this episode.
Yeah, it does. But then we have already seen this from Mulder before, in one of our favourite episodes, which was Beyond the Sea. And I do think it is a thing with Mulder that actually he is dismissive of things of a spiritual element, but not of an extraterrestrial one. And I think that is the difference between these two characters. Scully is spiritual but scientific. Mulder is not spiritual, but he is a person of belief, of faith. It's just not in. It's not in something of a. You know, spiritual nature. So
Kevin is kidnapped again.
Again, yeah. But I did like that Scully stood up to him. That was my takeaway from that scene. So yeah, so Kevin's taken from the bathroom in a scene that it's a bit of a funky breakout, isn't it? Because we see this guy burning through the bars.
It's not a big window.
No, it's not a big window. So once he's burnt through those bars, he's got to smash the window. Now, presumably that's the point at which Mulder and Scully hear, you know, because they hear it. Then he's got to get in the window, grab Kevin, push Kevin out the window, get out the window himself, and be gone in the time it takes. So he locks the door, then he grabs Kevin, shoves him out the window, go out, in the time that it takes Mulder and Scully to go, hey, what was that noise? I don't know, let's check the door. Oh, it's locked. Bash it in. Boom. Yeah, not buying it.
No.
Not buying it.
I'm just not buying it that guy gets through the window.
Lose a few pounds first, mate. There's no way you get through that hole.
Like I think the kid could just about get through it, but there's no way, unless the door was locked by some other element.
I do love that Mulder starts being all Mr. Rational though. It's like, he must have used an acetylene blowtorch to get in. It's like, it's like the amount of like ridiculous explanations you've pulled over the years, Mulder, and seriously, like you're just ignoring everything that is right in front of you. This guy we're supposed to believe he's been sat there with a blowtorch.
Yeah. I mean, he's two rationales would have been. It's either a blowtorch or an extraterrestrial heat ray. That's the only two things it could possibly be.
the heat ray would be more rational at this point. Yeah. But so Scully says that they should go back and visit the father because he was the only one who said that somebody was after the boy, so it stands to reason that perhaps he's got more to offer. So they go back to him.
He seems more emotive than the last time.
Even though he's drugged up. So he's more emotive this time, even though he's been completely doped up. So they question him, and the father's been doped up, so he's of little help. But as they come out of the room, which again kind of means that this scene is a little bit defunct. They could have got to the circle on the bin scene without having to go back to the father, I guess. But it just brings back the idea of full circle to find the truth, which if we were paying attention, we didn't need a second reminder. So Scully sees this.
I don't like this.
The
bin.
The bin.
I just don't like the bin.
No, I didn't like it when she spots it, because I'm like, whoa, come on, you're pulling that one out of your ass, Scully. But once it's revealed that Simon, the killer guy, Simon, the rich guy, actually owns a recycling factory nearby, then I get why she's made that. I get why she's made that journey, but it is a very thin thread. She says it there.
No, but previously, did we have it previously, or is it just in that moment?
Well, we knew that he was a businessman. We knew that he was a successful, very rich businessman. We didn't quite know what business he was involved in until Scully drops the bomb there. Whoa, recycling company, man. So so she sees the full circle thing. It's a bit wishy-washy. It's a bit like, but again, it's that idea that Scully has to be the one who steps out into faith. She has to be the one who says, this could be stupid, but it could also be God speaking to me. Should I follow it and see where it leads, or should I ignore it? And she steps out into faith. So regardless of whether it's silly or whatever, how they get there, that's really what it's symbolising. So I go along with it for the sake of the story. So Mulder, who obviously isn't buying it at all and thinks Scully's crazy at this point, decides to go to the airport, which is where Simon has been spotted. So he disappears. And then we go to the recycling plant, where Simon, for whatever reason, after finding the one genuine stigmatic that he's been looking for so long, decides, and I don't know if it's just because he's a kid, he's struggling to kill him or whatever, he's deciding to do the old Scooby-Doo evil villain kind of speech, He's trying to convince Kevin that he has to die and all that. And
so I mean, he kidnaps him from the motel. He could have killed him at any point from there, all the way to. Are we assuming that he went to the airport, which is why there's been a sighting, because he tried to hire a car?
Well, either because it can't be divine intervention, satanic intervention. I don't know that's the thing.
But so he's got the kid, took the kid to the airport, tried to hire a car to take him somewhere else to kill him with his heat hands. And then... Okay. It's all over the place, and then Scully bursts in, and he kind of drags Kevin away. But rather than just killing him at the bottom of the stairs, he decides to try and throw him over the shoulders and awkwardly carry him up. I mean, it's just like, you're real stigmatic. You're getting a worse death than just heat.
He's going to kill himself and take Kevin with him. So a murder
most
suicide.
Ridiculous murder suicide I can imagine.
It's like somebody just had an idea. It's like, I want to see someone get ground up. I want to see someone in a grinder. That'd be really gnarly. That would. Let's do it. That's a good way to off someone. So and they just this whole climax for me just feels clunky. Feels really clunky.
I find that the way it's shot and edited, I don't know if I missed something, but you don't really see what happens with Kevin and CEO of Doom. They're kind of struggling at the top of the the grinder, and then it cuts to Mulder, Scully rushing up. Is that right?
Well, no, he throws. So you do see it. So Simon grabs Kevin, and then kind of just jumps backwards into the grinder. So then when we go up there and we look over the edge, we see that Kevin's managed to grab hold of something. Strong boy, strong boy, must be said. Because if Simon, this fully grown man's got hold of him and he manages to not only grab something, but although saying that, my 2-year-old just 2 days ago fell through the climbing frame that we've got and literally caught the bar and then hung there, which I was really impressed by. But that's, he didn't have a fully grown man kind of pulling him down at the same time. So, it again, how much divine intervention is it? See, my problem with this scene, my biggest problem, besides it being clunky, is that, like, for me, this whole thing was about a journey for Scully, and about how she is the boy's protector. She is the one who needs to save him. But I don't really feel like she has saved him. I feel like she's got there. Okay, he's saved himself. Like, the guy's tried to throw himself into a meat grinder, and well, I mean, I guess ultimately God saved him. You know, you look at his divine intervention, God saved him, but he's still made Scully go on this journey. Scully's acted in faith. It's led her to the boy, but really, it's not about her saving the boy. It's about God saving the boy. Where she comes into it, it's her journey of faith. You know, it's all about her rekindling that faith that has been on the slide, been on the wane for a few years. So yeah, it's just done really clunkily, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But so a couple more scenes we get. Although again, there's another cringe line of dialogue at the end of that scene where the boys, where Kevin says, "I knew you'd come," and I'm just like, oh, shut up.
It suddenly seems to have turned into like Neo at the end of the Matrix. He's like super calm and all-knowing. Just, where's that came from?
Yeah. So Scully says goodbye to the boy, and asks if she thinks they'll ever meet again. And the boy says they will. Like, at that point, I don't really care about him. But she tells Mulder that she's got an errand to run, and that errand is confession. Turns out she's not been to confession for 6 years. We see how important it is for her that Mulder believes as she does. She doubts herself when he doesn't, which is a really interesting part of her character, I think. And then the priest says that maybe it was only meant for her. And she says she's afraid that God is talking, but that no one is listening, which is really what the whole episode is about for her character. So, already knowing where you're going to stand on this, wrap it up, Graham. Give us your final thoughts and score. Go.
I found this one a real chore to get through. I wasn't super interested in the story. I found Mulder to be completely just a douchebag in this. I kept feeling that the conversations that Scully and Mulder were having were just repetitive. It was the same argument over and over again, with nobody really buckling, or Mulder not buckling in any way. A lot of contrivances, which you could say is divine intervention, but I say contrivances. I found it just bland. I wouldn't say like it's not one of the worst episodes. It's not. It just wasn't one that really grabbed me and held my attention. Even watching it, I found myself waning a little bit, which is probably how I missed the bodies getting thrown into the grinder at the end. I think I'm going to be generous and give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Okay.
But that's being generous, I think.
All right. Here's the thing. I can totally understand that position and respect it, because I do think that, as we've said before with various episodes throughout this series, Chris Carter is a person of faith. He tries to get that into the show, Frank Spotnitz, who's a big producer on the show, he's not a person of faith, and he does everything in his power to tone those elements down. And I think there is a constant battle in the show for those ideologies. And I think this episode is a perfect example of that. I don't think it's a perfect episode. I think it's got flaws. I think it could be clearer in some of the things that it does. But again, as a person of faith myself, I do think it speaks to me. I get something out of it that perhaps I wouldn't get if I wasn't a person of faith. And for me, it's Scully's journey. I get your criticism about Mulder not buckling, but for me, that's life. People who don't believe it can be like that, where they're adamant it's a load of bollocks, I don't believe in it, this, that, and the other. But the important thing about that aspect of this episode is not that Mulder doesn't buckle, it's that Scully doesn't let his worldview sway her, and that she's able to stand up to him and say, no, actually, you know what? Faith accordingly. So I like Scully's journey in this episode. I like the scene between her and the priest at the end. I think it's quite chilling in many respects. Just that notion that, if God is speaking and no one is listening, where does that leave us? I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it could be better. They could have handled some things much better, but it speaks to me. So, yeah. That's
the thing. I'm not opposed to the religious episodes if it does it right. Like Beyond the Sea, I think handles it really well, especially with the elements of her father in that one as well. It's just because I wouldn't say I'm overly religious at all. I find when I don't feel it's got a straightforward narrative for me. I find it a little bit wayward. And then there's like a typical moment where at the end where she's at confession and she's like, do you believe in miracles, Father? And he's like, I see miracles every day when the sun comes up. And I'm just like, oh, that's what I imagine. Like, when I think of these things.
It's the pat answers, isn't it? It's the pat answers. Yeah. But I do like that she corrects him on it and says, no, I'm not talking about stuff. I'm talking about things that defy rational explanation. But it's even that little line of like, baby's born and sunrise and every day. I'm just like, oh god. And oh man. Right. Okay. So I'll try my best on this one, Brian. The next episode, episode 12, War of the Corpophagus. No idea. No idea. This is the one of the few episodes over the years that I have no idea how to pronounce, and I don't care. It's just
I'll tell you what. When I was looking up the title,
I call it.
Sorry, on you go.
I just call it War of the Cockroaches, which is basically what it's really about. I've always said cophrophages or cophrophages or it's a stupid word, but cophrophagus, yes. But it is a Darren Morgan episode.
Right.
Okay. Right. So
I when I was looking up the title, I saw a little like sentence, and it just said "Battle Against Cockroaches," and I was like, I'm in, sold. I'm so ready for it. I'm excited. I need this. I feel like we've had a couple of big legacy episodes, and then a kind of religious one, and I want a Monster of the Week.
Okay, it's again, as I say, it's a Darren Morgan episode, so take the Monster of the Week aspect with a pinch of salt. It's more about the humour, the comedy, about
great.
Yeah. I will say that I as I remember it, I would say it's Darren Morgan's weakest episode of I think he's done 7 over the course of the series.
But I feel from this guy that even his weak episodes are going to be better than a lot of the filler episodes that they get.
Yes.
So just a feeling
definitely.
I get.
Definitely yes. Yeah.
I'm super excited about that.
So don't expect Clyde Bruckman level or humbug level, but definitely expect better than your average kind of
Good.
episode.
I think Humbug was my #1 episode of last season, so yeah, we'll go with it. So thanks for listening, as always, and we'll see you next week for War of the Cockroaches.
That's what we're going to call it. See you.
Bye.